The Last Caravan is a tabletop role-playing game created by Ted Bushman, set in a post-apocalyptic America that's been devastated by an alien invasion. Unlike many role-playing games where players take on their personas of superheroes and intergalactic warriors, this game is about regular people, teachers, truck drivers, librarians, mechanics, moms, even dogs, who band together to survive wild situations. That's sort of the Steven Spielberg model, isn't it? No superheroes allowed, just ordinary people thrown into extraordinary circumstances. In this episode, we'll talk with the creator of the game, which emphasizes community, resilience, and storytelling, blending classic role-playing mechanics with a focus on collaboration, narrative, depth, and even music. So, Ted, how did I do with that introduction? Am I in the ballpark? Welcome to the podcast.
You're absolutely there. I'm so glad to be here. No, that's spectacular. I guess we'll be hiring you for our marketing very soon.
Is that right? Aim higher, but thank you. I know you as a playwright, composer, actor, choral. I mean, you have a lot of hats. Singer, songwriter, you've done a lot on stage. Do you think of The Last Caravan as primarily storytelling? And how did those settings and character choices affect the experience of playing the game?
It's absolutely about storytelling. I think that the theater kid to tabletop role-playing games pipeline has become a water slide in the last 10 years. I mean, people are just pouring down this thing. It's this chance for, theater people get to tell their story, and it doesn't have to be dependent on casting. They get to make a character they love. So I think, like, for actors particularly, that's a sense. And then, yeah, for me, it's what's really exciting from a game design standpoint is creating this meta level of how can I create rules and structures that create narratives for other people that allow them to have the tools to tell a meaningful story at their table, even if they don't have, a degree in screenwriting?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk with you about this, but I'm also scared, I'll confess. I don't want to sound like a complete idiot on this. My only consolation is that our listeners will probably have the same questions about all of this that I do.
I hope so.
So be gentle and don't judge me too harshly. How's that?
No judgment.
Well, you can judge a little, but just not. Okay, so if this were a play or a movie or a novel, I could pretty easily visualize it unfolding, but role-playing games might be less familiar to some folks, so take a minute, why don't you, and set it all up. If I were one of your group, gathered around, getting ready to go, how do you play this thing?
Yeah. You're going to be sitting in a living room or on a Zoom call, depending, ideally in person. That's a lot of fun. And you're going to tell a story as a group. There's one person in the group who, in standard sort of role-playing game fare, is called the game master, the GM. DM was the Dungeons and Dragons term. That person often has the burden of a set of rules that they understand. You might have a copy of the book in the center of a table. People are picking it up and looking at it. You'll probably have a printed character sheet that records your character's name, their special abilities, the way that they engage with the world. And you're going to start by asking a question of who are we? Who is this family? And what happened when the aliens invaded less than a year ago? That's the story of this specific game. And you'll start telling a story about these people and their past. And you'll have ideas and you'll bounce things off of one another. At conventions, I do this a lot, where I sit down at a table with a bunch of strangers, and 3.5 hours later, we've had a full sort of beginning adventure of what might be a campaign. Often games like this are played with, the dream is the weekly game where you get together for 5, 10, 15 weeks. Sometimes, these D&D campaigns run for hundreds of sessions. The Last Caravan is designed to be a little shorter. But yeah, that's often what a game's going to look like. And, when uncertainty comes into play, when there's a question of, I'm the highway has collapsed beneath us and one of us fell out and we're trying to grab that person. We have a moment of uncertainty. We say, okay, let's roll some dice. And the game has mechanics to allow for that. And then whatever the dice tell us will push the story forward. Maybe if that's a success, it's a success. If it is a failure, your person falls, whatever, then you have to deal with this increasing, this problem that's become even worse. Or you might have, in this particular game, in this system, there's mixed things where it's you do succeed, but there's a problem. You succeed, but down in that gap where the highway is collapsed, you see there are alien creatures down below that are crawling their way up to your car, drawn by the noise or whatever.
Okay, I'm a bit fascinated with the role of the game master. As I watched you, you did a recorded video stream of you setting this up with a game of friends. And I felt like I
Mhm.
was watching a bunch of actors and improvisers. But the game master was kind of like a director of a play who has like the script in hand, or is it like the Bible, the kind of the parameters of it, and keeps the players from going too far off the quest. But is that how you see the game master of the
Yeah.
Lost Caravan?
Th- there are, of course, so many strong opinions in the community about the role of the game master, and of course, designers will sort of change the role of the game master in the way that they play. So the sort of archetypal version is the GM is God. The GM runs the whole world that the players inhabit, and every time they try to act, it is only sort of through the GM's acceptance of their actions that things actually occur. This is, I think, become a lot softer in recent years. But yeah, I think that that is an archetypal view. And in Last Caravan, we have we call it the Atlas. Sometimes games have cute, unique names for their GM role. But the Atlas in our game does, they take on the roles of all the NPCs. They play all these different characters, and they are trying to. But for me, the big thing about the GM is that it's all in service of the players. The GM has to be a fan of their players and their characters, and your goal. Well, I'll sit before sessions, and I'm always thinking, okay, this person is playing this character. How can I create a narrative that meaningfully brings their character forward? It reveals things about that person, tells us more about the world, helps them grow on their arc. We're often talking in terms of narrative arcs about who's going where, what's happening.
Okay, so in the case of the Last Caravan, how long does it take to finish the game, or is it not like that at all?
It is a finishable game. It's supposed to be a concrete road trip, often from the East Coast to San Francisco, which is in the wake of this alien invasion became a sort of survivor fortress called the Republic of Saint Francis. And the idea is that you are journeying on this road trip, but as you are doing so, the factions of this alien invasion are building to some new conflict, and you're going to have a place, a hand in shaping what that becomes. So for us, that's going to be 6 to 12 sessions is how we talk about it usually.
Okay.
And a session is about 2 to 4 hours of play. I try to never cross the 4-hour mark, but there are people who go nuts.
Yeah, I guess we haven't really talked about how this all came to be, and I want to go into that a little bit in
Yeah.
detail later. But when we say a game designer, I'm just seeing how the complexities of this thing, and how did it start for you, and how did that all develop?
Yeah. So I started playing role-playing games in 2016. My good friend Carson Wright, who eventually designed the character sheets for Last Caravan, and is like as one of the many people wearing hats in this project. He ran a game of D&D for me that I totally bounced off of. But a couple years later, I discovered some other systems, and I started playing more of these, and I really started to enjoy it, especially playing the GM role. I really liked that a lot because of my natural bent towards authoritarianism and power hungriness. But also being able to enact my own vision. That.
I have seen you work as a choral conductor, and I can testify to the authoritarian musical impulse.
That's
Okay.
right.
So,
So
how
from
much
there,
time are we
yeah.
talking about? Like, how long this process was it for you?
Yeah, so I had this vision of this narrative of a post-apocalyptic road trip in the wake of an alien invasion for some time. I tried it out a couple different mediums. I was designing a video game at one point before I had any of the skills to do that, and I still don't exactly have those. And I have a friend, Graham Ward, who's a brilliant game designer in his own right, who had funded a thing in 2015. And I mentioned this idea to him. We ran a playtest, and he was like, "This is really good." And the draft that I'd sort of drafted out. Okay, this might be what it would feel like to run this as a tabletop role playing game. And he was like, "You're 75% done." And I was like, "What? Oh, I thought I was 25% done." So that sort of year and a half after that moment of him telling me that, we had a good enough thing. We had commissioned a piece of cover art. We had one piece of art, really. We had two pieces of character art on top of that, I guess. So 3 pieces of art. We made this Kickstarter, and we made way more money than we should have. Not a huge amount of money, but for what we were offering, people were very generous and kind. And so that allowed us to then dive in and make something that was way better than we thought it had any right to be, given our skill sets and what we were bringing to the table. And then we got picked up by a publisher, a really great publisher called Mythworks, who's really up and coming. They've published some spectacular award-winning games in recent years, and they're just great folks with great taste. And except for, I guess, picking us up, which was strange on their part. But but then so that's been sort of that's sort of the arc of creation in that respect. I had sort of had this apprenticeship of learning to play different tabletop role-playing games, getting introduced to the indie scene, specifically through John Harper's game Blades in the Dark, which is about Victorian thieves in a dark fantasy city. And that game, a lot of the systems in the Last Caravan are hacked or borrowed from Blades of the Dark, which is a much respected tradition in the tabletop role playing game space. Nobody's trying to copyright their mechanics. Everybody's trying to be like, yeah, copy my game, make your own thing. It's a very free, very hobbyist kind of attitude.
Really? So the community is kind of like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's a huge, I mean, people will develop their system and then they'll have the little name for like, this is what you call it when you use my system in your game. So like Blades in the Dark is the game. The system is Forged in the Dark. Our games will sort of vary to their level of Forged in the Darkness or their level of Dungeons and Dragonsness, whatever system you're borrowing from. So we're probably 33% Blades in the Dark.
You're
there's
not
a lot of other stuff.
Drive in the Dark? Is that the name of it?
yeah, Drive in the Dark. Yeah, and honestly, we could have leaned a little bit more in that direction, but we decided to go a few more.
Okay,
directions.
so I think I'm getting a general feel for it, and what I found as I was looking through the materials is that there was a lot of humanity here. And one of the things that has been kind of unappealing to me about some gameplay is that I just can't relate to being an alien. I'm sorry. Or a serial killer or whatever. I just don't really do that. But, these are just like people driving around and doing their best with this crazy situation. Why was that important to you?
Yeah,
Was it relatability or was there something more to it?
For me, the thing that one of the innovations of Blades in the Dark to me was the way that it fought against the tavern trope, the you meet in a tavern trope of Dungeons and Dragons, which, to talk about that, in Dungeons and Dragons, the prototypical beginning of a game is that all of your characters happen to have showed up in a roadside tavern in a fantasy world. They have no reason to care about each other. They have no reason to be working together. Usually it becomes about mercenary work. Usually it becomes, oh, we need to go kill some small semi-sentient goblins in order for our adventure to have a reason to start. That I've always found is a very weak reason to tell a story about a group of people. And Blades in the Dark made it, okay, you are a criminal gang doing criminal things. That was also very effective, and I found that to be quite fun because you're on this enterprise together, and so you have reasons to justify it. But then I thought, okay, what if you're a family? You're on an adventure together, but you are related to one another. It's just a little, it's Little Miss Sunshine. It's the Mitchells and the Machines. It's these narratives where families have to work together in a way that is really, it's just fundamentally different. And what I found to be the case at the table is that like when we run these, even with strangers, you almost instantaneously have these deep feelings about relationships. In my most recent game, I was at a writers' convention in Seattle, and I ran a game, and someone was like, "Oh, I think I did a stint in prison." Like this person had like an anger issue. They'd gone to prison for a while, and the entire table changed around that because suddenly everybody had a strong opinion about what had happened to that person, about the behaviors that had sent him there, about whether he deserved it, about how him being in prison had affected Mom, this NPC who wasn't, really related. All of those things, you just create this like immediate Gordian knot of fascinating relationships that I think is just so exciting.
Well, they're all backstory.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all connected. That makes a lot of sense to me. I would imagine that technology, let's say over the last, I don't know, 15 years, let's say, and COVID have affected role-playing games. Is that the case?
Enormously.
Oh, how did that play out?
Yeah, no, that's very perceptive. It's, I think that playing games over Zoom was a huge thing for a lot of people in the pandemic. In fact, my wife and I, we've known each other for 11 years, but we reconnected playing role-playing games over Zoom during the pandemic. It was a thing. So that has combined with a couple of like really high profile groups. You may have heard, or in searching online, you may have heard the terms Critical Role or Dimension 20. These are actual play groups, which are people who sort of on a professional filmed level, often they're voice actors or comedy sketch artists. They'll run their own games and then release them for other people to watch. And so there's been this feedback loop where people watch these really cool versions of what role-playing games can be and then say, I can do that. And then they do it on their own and they have their own thing. And so and then you have game designers jumping into the mix. And so, we're now at a point where Dimension 20 is sold out Madison Square Garden earlier this year, doing a show of Dungeons and Dragons, so it's kind of, become this fabulous thing. And I think the technology, both the technology of like streaming, like Twitch streaming and like people watching people play games, and then the isolation of the pandemic, I think combined in a way that made this into a very appealing thing. And also, it's, this general loss of community. I think that this is I don't know if you know David Graeber's term compensatory consumerism, where you're thinking where certain types of products are designed that you can do them by yourself after work easily. Watching TV is a compensatory consumerism. You have to spend your day doing work that you don't care about or like, but in the evening you get this reward and it's this little thing. Other types of consumerism are sometimes harder to do. They have higher buy-in. Tabletop role-playing games are like this, but I think a lot of people see it. Not that they would make this comparison, but that it is sort of a church-like experience of like, this is my community, this is my group, we do this thing, we create this story together. There's something
Well, I
about
was
that.
familiar with the first person, hang out in a room, get as much junk food as the table can hold,
Yeah,
experience. But,
yeah.
Twitch is a whole other thing, and I was reading some statistics about it. 3 million broadcasters monthly and 15 million daily active users live streaming video games. So that's morphed into a whole other kind of, I don't know if we say entertainment, if we say something else, right?
Yeah, it is truly I think it is so in flux what it is and what it is that we're getting out of it. I think there's parasocial elements to it. Yeah, it's a fascinating landscape.
I mean, I saw the online, the Twitch's website is now, owned by Amazon, is the 30th most visited website in the world. So for a game like yours, people can play it and stream it, and there's a possibility, for other kinds of role-playing games of viewers interacting through Twitch chat, and sometimes for charity events, they can affect the outcome of the game itself by their donations or participation and so forth. And YouTube
Yes.
is, right behind in game streaming, another huge venue for it. So
Yes.
has Last Caravan had that kind of streaming presence too, where it's been part of this new, I don't know, what would you call it, a new platform of
Yeah,
distribution?
this new ecosystem. Yeah, there have been people who have streamed entire campaigns of The Last Caravan. There's a couple different groups, like High Shelf Gaming has done one. There's a number of groups. It hasn't had explosive success in that format, and I think what's interesting about it is that um, one thing that tabletop role-playing games is trying to figure out, and this is maybe a little bit too inside baseball, but Dungeons and Dragons is a monolith. It's a very likely term to say 90%, 95% of all the money that gets exchanged in the entire role-playing game industry is about Dungeons and Dragons or related
Yeah.
specifically to Dungeons and Dragons. That is almost certainly the case. And so you you have these other systems that are jumping in and making a move. And there's actually some really interesting, like really in terms of inside baseball, I'll just give you a tiny quick sense of it. Dungeons and Dragons made a really big blunder a couple of years ago. Hasbro's, been trying to monetize it because they can sense there's this groundswell of interest and they don't know how to make enough money off of it or how to make more money off of it. And so they have for many years, for their 40 plus year history, had this very open OGL, the open gaming license. I don't remember exactly what it's called. This is proving that I'm not so in on this, but where anybody could make third-party content at no cost. They would make all the profits on their own because D&D felt that it would promote the game generally, and they're like, even if they're not making money off these third-party things, they're making money off their own. Hasbro goes, maybe we're not going to do that. Maybe we're going to make you pay us for selling D&D content, and the community exploded. People were furious. There were huge sort of talk of boycotts and all this stuff. And now Critical Role, who is this big channel who does a lot, who's like the most popular D&D streamer in the world, has just made and released their own tabletop role-playing game, their own competitor to Dungeons and Dragons. And now they're still running Dungeons and Dragons, but you can sense this Cold War that's now happening, and that other game designers are thinking there's a point at which people will stop only knowing D&D and will start knowing what a tabletop role-playing game is, which we're still not there yet, but we're going to get there, and that's going to change the landscape. So anyway, that's its own little tangent, but it's an interesting ecosystem.
I wanted to talk next about the business model of all of this. So you rolled out your first version of this, and we'll talk about the expansion in a second, but you rolled this out on Kickstarter. So tell us what that looked like.
Yeah. So Kickstarter has had this absolutely symbiotic relationship with tabletop role-playing games and board games in general in the last 20 years. I mean, if you played Settlers of Catan in 1990 and searched board games at one point in 2010 or 2015, you suddenly realize, there are thousands more board games out there in the world, and they're making them we're getting a glut of them every year. So Kickstarter is the perfect model for that, because you have these people who have this idea. They want to have an audience in advance. They can do physical rewards. They can give little extra exclusives. It's a great thing. We did our Kickstarter for The Last Caravan, and made $18,000 of a $4,000 goal, which was great. And we're able to print a couple thousand copies. We, partway through the process, as we were releasing some of our early layout and be like, hey, this is what the book is going to look like. That's what was when we were reached out to by a publisher, Mythworks. Mythworks, they have presence at all the conventions, and they handle all physical distribution. I have not licked a single stamp during this entire process. That's amazing. That is not the case for most designers. So that was a huge jump and was not expected. I was planning on licking a lot of stamps. So there are a few ways that the physical book gets sold. Conventions is one of them. Digital direct sales is the most common. There's also distribution. Mythworks has relationships with distributors who get them to what we call FLGSs, what we call friendly local game stores, all usually privately owned. These exist across the country, and they have relationships with these distributors. So, so I've got friends texting me a lot these days saying, "I just saw your game in my local game store." So that happens. So those sales happen. Obviously, you're getting less commission on the distributed ones. The best you get is direct digital sales, and then the publisher takes a little bit more on the con sales, since they're putting in all this effort to make the cons happen.
Okay, so then again, so let me clarify, because I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure that I know correctly. So a sale could be, your atlas, which is the Bible that tells you the parameters of the game, as well as the individual pages that they're cards that have the players and the point systems and all that kind of stuff. Is that it?
So the original Kickstarter is one product, this book. This is the atlas, as you call it. This is what we call the core book, because there will be more books. But this has all of the information you need to run the game is in here. There is in the back these character sheets. You are probably not going to be playing with these character sheets. These are more examples. What you do is you go on to our website and you download a copy of these and then print them for your table. We have these color versions and then printer-friendly versions as well if you've got a grayscale computer. As I said, there's one product, which is the book, but then the other things you're going to have at the table are going to be the character sheets and then dice. And in this game, all we use is classic D6 dice, the basic dice that you're familiar with.
Those are six-sided dice for the uninitiated.
That's right. Yes, D6 is a six-sided dice. Yeah, the classic Yahtzee dice. What we're most familiar
with. Gamer types, it's all about the acronyms, which is hilarious because you don't even know what the acronyms are.
Yeah, seriously.
Tabletop role playing is like incorrect, because tabletop is one word and role playing is one word, so it should be shorter anyway.
Should be TRPG, yeah, totally. Yeah, and it should be TRG, yeah, because why is role playing? Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's very strange. So a sale is someone buying this book. You're so fun. Other thing is that the PDF version, you could just totally get the PDF, learn it from that, and run it without even having the physical book at the table. So Mythworks does all the digital sales, and whenever they sell a physical version, they give the PDF as well. And then I also have a storefront where I sell the digital versions, and I get all the profits from that. Me and my collaborator.
Yeah, so you don't have the kind of overhead like, a board game. I mean, printing board games,
Mm-hmm.
heaven help them.
Yeah.
That must be so
Yeah.
expensive to do all of that. And
Yes.
inventory is a whole crazy thing.
Warehousing, yeah, it's a big industry. So yeah, we us being part of a broader group helps us as well as them.
When you're using plural pronouns here, I imagine that it's a lot just you, though. Are you being just nice when you're talking about the royal we here?
So partially. My friend Graham Ward and I, as who I mentioned, who originally got me onto this, he and I are business partners in an LLC called Grey Wild Games, which, we don't particularly promote that company just because it's basically the container for whatever games we make. He did the layout on The Last Caravan, and it's gorgeous. Like, he did so much work on it. He spent, a couple years of his life to do that. And so that is like that. And then also he's the developmental editor. So he helped me design the game. He helped me, it is my design that my name's on the cover for a reason, but he did so much to improve it and to help me, and has been a huge help. So he is my number one collaborator and my business partner in the project. It is largely my project with this specific game, but we have other games where we work on where that work relationship would change.
I'm not against the idea of collaboration, Ted. I just wanted to be clear.
Of course, I appreciate it.
At a certain point, though, you said, this could really work. When was that?
Yeah. Well, there were a couple points. Getting picked up by a publisher when we go, oh, and then going to a convention and having people know the game and have heard of the game, and the idea that word of mouth was moving, albeit in a very small way. That was a moment of surprise. The biggest one was this last summer. A couple of months ago, we were nominated for ENnie-awards, which are the EN-World is a big website, and they run a yearly game awards, and this is the big one of the industry. And we were nominated for not just 2 awards; we were nominated for Best Game and Product of the Year at this. All of our competitors were orders of magnitude had raised orders of magnitude more money than us to make their own games. It was really shocking to be nominated, and wonderful. And part of it is our association with Mythworks, who has a lot of cred in the industry because it's sort of a rising star. But I think the game stood on its own merits, and so it was sort of this thing of, it felt like permission to, we were already planning these expansions, but it felt like, no, there's potentially a place for you and what you're creating in this industry.
Yeah, it's kind of like an indie film getting an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, and a much smaller scale, but yeah, absolutely, that's how it felt.
Don't minimize my clever analogies, Mr.
I'm very sorry.
Okay, so I'm fascinated with the expansions in games. So I know we play games at our house, and I get expansions sometimes just for the fun of it. So one of the catalysts for this conversation is a new expansion for your game. So I want to know everything about it. Tell me.
Yeah. Thank you. So we are running a Kickstarter right now called Westward Bound, in which we are funding. We were very clear with the first Kickstarter, one physical product. We're gonna make this as easy as possible. And then with the second Kickstarter, we threw that out the window. We're reprinting the core book. We're doing a hardcover book expansion called Lost Highway that is sort of an atlas guide. It's a book of scenarios that are like easy to run for the GM who's like, I just got home from work. I'm running my game of Last Caravan. I haven't prepped. What can I find in here that's fun to run? That's the dream of this thing. Also, it's got we have like character sheets for not just playing as humans, but playing as aliens in this one, which is a little bit maybe outside your wheelhouse, but I think for some people that's a lot of fun. And there's going to be lots of other stuff inside that expansion. It's going to be a big grab bag of really, hopefully, incredibly useful stuff to make running the game better. Second expansion is a little zine. It's going to be maybe 60 pages. It's going to be called Westward Bound, and it is what if, because as you mentioned in your intro, you can play as the family dog in The Last Caravan, and that has always raised the question for players of, what if every single player was a dog? And so now we're doing a full expansion that is a standalone game using the same rule set of, what if you were a bunch of dogs in an alien invasion trying to find your humans? Yeah.
Hilarious. Hilarious idea. Do the dogs have to learn how to drive a car and stuff?
I sort of wanted to provide some options where there's like, yeah, if you want to do the thing where like you've got the dog on the on the gas and the dog on the brake and the one like trying to like, that's so fun. If that feels too cartoony to you, there's the version where you're like, oh, you found an alien car that responds to barks or whatever, because the aliens use like harmonic musical technologies in our game. So that could be a version of it. Anyway, so we have some variety, and to the question of how cartoonish do you want to go with your particular game?
Okay, speaking of music, so a CD was part of this, right? I mean,
Yes.
tell me about that. That has to be an unusual feature in role-playing games.
That is not standard. There are games who release EPs of music all the time. It's a common stretch goal and things. If they're gonna do it, that's where it's gonna show up. I mean, but yeah, very rare. But I've got some incredible friends. The cellist Rob Willis, who's just unbelievable. And Donovan Dorrance,
Love him.
brother of Michelle Dorrance. And my friend Jordan Call, you may not know, he clerked on this clerked for the Supreme Court some years ago, and now is a stay-at-home dad and who does gypsy jazz.
Well, that's a step up, if you ask me. But
yeah, I think he would agree. He's a really brilliant guy. All three of them are brilliant. And so I was a little bit like, oh, what if we did this as an excuse to make some music together? And so we did make some Americana of different kinds. One of the tracks briefly went viral in Indonesia. We had like 300 million streams of this thing, which of course in TikTok money got us about $20. So who knows why that was the case, but so it was a super fun project, and it proved very useful in terms of marketing the next expansion because we have all this built-in music. That's good for all
but
stuff.
in the Indonesian currency, it probably is a larger number. It makes it sound bigger. That's what
That's
I would
right.
be using, just as a little bit of
Yeah. Also, we made this many. I don't know the name of their currency, but yes.
This podcast, Ted, as you know, being a longtime friend of the center, it's an interview series with artists, and I think of Last Caravan as a multidisciplinary artwork because it has elements of music, theater, storytelling, and design built right into it. There's the playing of it itself, which feels to me a lot like a performance. So
Yes.
what do you make of my ideas? I don't know if they align with yours, and how does that speak to you as someone who's constantly creating artworks in various media like you do?
I mean, it absolutely is. In a very weird industry at a very weird time, this is a way for me to be able to enact a lot of things that I love and to put a lot of them out there. And so much of this is like, it's this incredible luck of not only delivering the product that I have promised to backers, but also getting to expand this in ways that interest me. That, doing the album was really an act of just like, I want an excuse to be able to do this kind of thing. And yeah, I think that's absolutely the right interpretation of it. I think it's hugely multidisciplinary, and it also allows for interesting relationships with its audience because the audience are the performers. It's implicating people in the production of it. It's not a road show, but it's a distant cousin thereof in its weird way.
Yeah. I don't know what a roadshow is. I'm not old enough for that. But last night I was at the Metropolitan Opera and I was thinking about the interdisciplinary aspect of it. And, you obviously have musicians and designers and choreographers and lighting folks and, and authors as well as, everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think for me in that experience there was some 2 + 2 = 5 equation where being there made it all feel more elevated. And I haven't played your game yet. No one's invited me to join. No, it's okay. I would imagine that as a player, that the combination of all of these artistic things in the role-playing game has to elevate the experience. Has that been your?
I think absolutely. Yeah, you're because it's such a. I think one of the things that makes tabletop role-playing games have a hard barrier to entry is that they really require it's partially about a reduction of shame. It's about the ability of being able to say, I played pretend as a kid, and I want to play pretend now with this group of people with this structure, and I'm going to buy into that. And so every tool you can use to reduce that barrier to entry, whether that's music or like media, like I'll often put on the TV. This is very silly, but like I'll put on a video of someone driving through snowy mountains, and like it's just like a 2 hour stream of somebody doing that. And it's like that goes on there. You've got this. You get the the lighting. Kristen will often do thematic snacks for whatever game we're doing. It's lots of trail mix for Last Caravan. But yeah, I think it's in its really magical moments. It allows for something that's more than just I want to swing my sword and hit a goblin. It's this real uh, uh, surrender to a narrative as a group, and yeah, I think it's really incredible.
Yeah, we've had a rough week. We're having this conversation uh, in the days right after the Michigan attacks and after assassinations. And
Yes.
many people who are related to me seem to think that the world is falling apart any given
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
So, what have you learned about the real world and people and art because of your work in the Last Caravan?
Oh, that's a very generous question, Glenn. In the book I wrote about some of my priorities with the book, and one of them was about the portrayal of rural people, um, because the book's sort of uh, assumption is that the cities were the first place to get attacked by the aliens, so the majority of the people in your game are likely either people who have been living in rural areas or people who have then moved there. Um, and I just think that the portrait of rural people that we get from often sort of coastal media institutions, of which I'm sort of very much a part, I think are often so shallow and so unrepresentative of the wonderful people you have in those locations. And so I wanted to tell a story about reconciliation. I think part of that is recognizing what America is like driving through it. And a lot of this comes from my experiences as a kid, taking road trips with my family all the time. My mom, I've often joked, is half car, and she will, she'll take a road trip at a drop of a hat. She and I have driven across the country together, I think at least a dozen times, just the two of us, doing like full big road trips. And um, so for me, like in this moment of like pretty severe pain for the country and like this talk of national divorce and all this stuff, I am very committed to the idea of what is it like even when crisis hits, when the alien invasion happens, when whatever thing happens, what does it look like to try and reshape a new world in a way that's conciliatory, in a way that is understanding of other people. And there are also challenges of people trying to fill power vacuums and things in the game and in real life, and like those
Yeah.
create additional complexities with just the like we're friends on the road. So um so that's like what I thought it talked about in theory and thought about in theory. What's happened in practice, I'm thinking a lot about my experiences at conventions and meeting people at tables and doing these things, is I just see a world of people who, one, all yearn for and are eager for and are down for telling stories together, and that those people are even weirder and more wonderful than you imagine. I met a guy who shared his like sort of he's making a TTRPG that's sort of like hyper Christian, and it's about like journeys of faith, and I'm like, I would never make an explicitly like he's like, you're going to be like analyzing the scriptures as you do this TTRPG, and I'm like, what a cool weird thing. And like I had no idea. Like I'd known this guy for a year. He'd play tested the game, is very very helpful and thoughtful, and then to see this other side of him was just so exciting. And I just um truth is stranger than fiction and more wonderful than fiction in ways when you get to know people. And I think that that's, in the best case scenario, what this particular art form can do uniquely.
Yeah. Have you experienced a difference between what players take in terms of meaning from the entire game when they're doing it in person versus when they're doing it, sharing it in some other way online or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that the difference is the same as we perceive with like Zoom fatigue. I think that like tabletop role playing games in particular demand a degree of intimacy, and so I think there can be a distancing effect when it's virtual. The thing is, I think lots of people still have great games virtually, and I've had some of my best tabletop role playing game experiences virtually as well. So I don't want to knock it. I think when you can do it in person, it's ideal. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah. It's so impressive to me what you've accomplished, Teddy.
Thanks,
And I
Glenn.
wish you such continued success. How can somebody learn more about you and your work in this game? So let's break that apart. How
Yeah.
can they learn more about you, your work, and this game?
Yeah. So learning more about me, my name is Ted Bushman. I'm on the internet in lots of different forums. There's a website where you can see all my acting info. I have there's a distributor called itch.io, which is a website where a lot of independent game developers sell their work. I'm on there as well. You can find all my work there and get updates if you follow my sort of feed there. Mythworks is the name of the company that sells physical copies of The Last Caravan. We are actually currently sold out of our entire print run, but that is the reason that this Kickstarter exists. We are funding a new print run, so if you wanted to hop onto the Kickstarter, you search Kickstarter, The Last Caravan. You could add Westward Bound, which is the specific name of this Kickstarter, but you'd find it either way. Those are places to find me. And yeah, if you ever come to New York, just hit me up.
You're amazing. Thank you so much. I want to thank you for being on the podcast today. And thank you, all you wonderful listeners, for your interest in the center. You can go learn more about this podcast, of course, by going to the center's website, www.centerforlatterdaysaintarts.org. Goodbye. And
Goodbye.